The pre-season favourite begins with a win. George Russell wins the Australian Grand Prix.
Woo! Very nice, very nice. I like this car, I like this engine.
George has got an opportunity, doesn't he? He's got the best Formula One car on the grid at the moment. He's got all of the tools in the arsenal now to do the job on a consistent basis.
What about Kimi Antonelli? Do you think he can present a season-long challenge to Russell?
This is where George is going to have to be the best version of George Russell, isn't he?
Are Ferrari close enough to make a proper race of this?
I think Ferrari are close enough.
Are you talking yourself into a Lewis Hamilton victory this year, JP?
It's happening. I think Lewis Hamilton will definitely be on the top step this year.
Being serious for a sec, you do
I'm not
believe
joking.
that?
Yeah. I think he will.
I've just got to go and work out how we break this Piastri curse and get him to the finish and on the podium somehow.
It was one of the great rookie displays from Lindblad. The most impressive debut I've seen for a long, long time.
Hello everyone and welcome to F1 Nation, the official F1 podcast that previews and reviews every Grand Prix. I'm Tom Clarkson and I'm sat in the Melbourne paddock with F1 TV commentator and former F1 driver Jolyon Palmer and Richard Craill from Australia's Channel 10. Well guys, new rules. Mercedes got a 1-2 in qualifying and a 1-2 in the race. What are our main takes from it? Crailsy.
I thought that if that's the future of Formula One in these regulations, it was a pretty rewarding start. The first 15 laps, as they learned these new energy recovery systems and the overtake system and the boost and everything that's new to the Formula One as an on-track product this year, were spectacular. And that to and fro between George Russell and Charles Leclerc was exceptional racing, wheel-to-wheel racing, aided, yes, by the energy recovery that was going on, but you could almost see them learn as they were going. Every time they got side by side, they go, oh, that didn't work, or that did, and then the move would happen. Wild. And then the remaining two-thirds of the race were very similar to how the last couple of Australian Grand Prix have played out here at Melbourne, where overtaking is at a premium. You've really got to earn an overtake here at this place, and strategy played a little bit of role as well with tyres and some two-stopping and some not. So it was a pass mark for mine and a very small sample size of these new regulations.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, wasn't it? The start of the race was incredible. The disparity between teams off the line was something that we highlighted already after testing, and that came to fruition. You had Arvid Lindblad running in the top 3 on the first lap, having qualified 9th, which was crazy. Spoke to Ollie Behrman straight after the race, and he found out that Charles and George swapped places 7 times, and he was like, George dropped. What on earth has gone for the race lead? But it was like that, wasn't it? You never. It always felt like in a minute George will land it properly, and then he'll be off. But Charles actually did a great job, held him back, and we had a cracking race. There's so much detail in driving the cars that the drivers are getting used to. There's different techniques. It's a different style of racing. This circuit is a bit of a one-off for it as well, or it's one of the outliers in terms of recharging the batteries, and that's a big thing. But for the race, I mean, it was amazing to see a battle like that.
Different style of racing. Charles Leclerc said after the race that you have to be much more strategic in your overtakes now. That gets thumbs up from me.
It's a thumbs up because there's energy deployment and you can have different options to try and overtake. For a driver's point of view, it's less all guts and glory, give it everything. It's a bit more of a chess game than a boxing match. And I think they are trying to work it out. I think over time the systems will get refined. It'll become more obvious how to race and where you get the advantage of drivers coming up behind. But yeah, I'm not against thinking drivers having a small advantage like that, and I think that's what we saw.
I really enjoyed that moment, and especially here at Albert Park in the past, DRS has been very much almost a free pass in a lot of occasions, and this is not a Grand Prix where there's been a lot of overtaking with or without DRS. But I love the fact that the thinking drivers, as you said, JP, had to work out where they were going to pull a move and where their deployment might end, and they'd end up parked side by side. And then it did become a driver thing, and we saw more side by side through turn 9 today than I think we've ever seen in an Australian Grand Prix. And while turn 9 might not be quite as fierce and quite as quick as it's been in the past, still a very, very fast left-hand corner. So I think we still saw enough from the racing car driver bit, the organic component bit, to go, yeah, that was great. And they've got to work really hard to execute a pass and to line it up and to plan it out for the rest of the race.
And actually, the Charles and George fight at the front as well, it was obviously dominated by energy management, but it was still drivers often side by side into corners. We had turn 9, as you say, a key part of that. We also had the moment up to turn 11 where Charles coming in cross, George's pinched to the white line and got on the radio, didn't love it. But that's hard wheel-to-wheel racing, not slam dunk passes. So there was a lot of positives.
Right, we've parked ourselves in the paddock here at Albert Park, outside Mercedes. The team have just been celebrating their 1-2, wearing P1 tops. They were confident before coming into this opening Grand Prix, weren't they? But how much of an emphatic performance was this from Mercedes? Are Ferrari close enough to make a proper race of this?
I think Ferrari are close enough. I don't know if Mercedes have more to exploit in the coming races. Yesterday was emphatic, wasn't it? They were miles ahead, and it was very much either Russell or Antonelli will be champions, but not from today's action. I think the Ferrari pace was good. Mercedes still had a couple of tenths in hand, but the way that Ferrari can get off the line is going to be a headache for anyone that's not Ferrari powered for the next few races. And they won it effectively with a strategy call still. George didn't just blast past on the straight. It was a strategy call to get them clear air and a cheaper pit stop. So I think it's game on.
Talking of strategy, how much of an error was it by Ferrari not to pit at that first virtual safety car?
I was surprised that they didn't pit at least one car. They had 2 cars in the fight against the 2 Mercedes. My thought was maybe they pit, whether it was Leclerc or Hamilton, and go, let's just see. Let's put the pressure on by following that Mercedes strategy. We'll keep one car out to go for that longer run and maybe get a safety car or a VSC later. I was surprised they didn't gamble with that. Did it change the outcome of the race? I think the answer is probably no. I think we still would have seen a 1-2 from Mercedes at the end of it regardless. Would the gap have been closer? Would there have been more pressure on the Mercedes? I think the answer was probably yes, because on one lap pace the Ferraris were able to go with it. There was a stint in that middle there, JP, where the 2 Mercs were really, really impressive, and they powered away from the Ferraris and probably broke the back of it a little bit, but I would have loved to have seen them just a little bit more under pressure from Ferrari, where in the end it was 10 seconds back to Leclerc, and there was never really that threat that popped up in the race.
Yeah, they would have had to overtake a Ferrari to win the race,
yes,
which is what we wanted to see. The fact that in the end both the 2 Ferraris pitted under full green conditions, so they lost the full nearly 20 seconds of pit stop, meant that they were 3-4 and that was it. If Leclerc pits on the first safety car, you've got 2 scenarios for Russell. He either pits or he doesn't. If he pits, they're both probably going to the end, and we're in that dogfight for another, 40 laps. If Russell stays out, he takes the clear air. It's what I think probably would have happened. Mercedes try to give themselves clear air. He would have then had an advantage to come through, but we would have had to see him pass on the track. And I think Ferrari, by not pitting at least one of their drivers, made an error. I'm surprised they didn't split the strategy, as Lewis said.
I thought it was interesting to hear Lewis Hamilton being a little bit more assertive over the radio. We should have pitted one of our cars, is what he said. I felt he's decided over the winter that he's got to take control in the radio situation this year, and he was reading the race for the pit wall.
It frustrated the living daylight out of me when you're sitting in the car, you're so focused on everything, especially this year. The complication of driving the cars is higher than ever. And you just think, why have we done this? When the strategy goes wrong, you're in the car and you're thinking, I've got a better idea than the guys on the pit wall, and it's their one job is to get this right. And I do think Lewis is correct on this occasion. I think they had to split the cars. I sympathise a bit with Ferrari. It's difficult when you are leading because you have track position and you have everything to lose, and the gain is to just keep your place. It's easier to roll the dice further back, but that's why you have 2 cars there. You have 1 and 3. Split the cars. One will be correct, the other one will be incorrect. Hopefully there's not much in it, but by staying out is incorrect for both. So that's the bit that didn't make sense to me.
George Russell, from where I was sitting, didn't make a mistake all weekend. We saw it in Singapore last year. We've seen it again here. Just emphasising the fact that he's ready to win the title in the right car.
Well, and Formula One's all about positioning yourself as a driver to be in the right car at the right time with the right group of people around you to win the World Championship. It worked for Lando Norris last year. It worked for that incredible Lewis Hamilton era at Mercedes and Max Verstappen at Red Bull. So, as we know, to win the F1 title, all of those bits have got to come into place, which is what makes Formula One such a wonderful team sport, is that the car plays such a big role. Well, George has got an opportunity, doesn't he? He's got the best Formula One car on the grid at the moment. He's got a young, still relatively inexperienced, if extremely fast teammate alongside him. But that 155 races, I think, now that George has got in his career means that he's got that experience. He's built that CV. He understands how to race. He's got all of the tools in the arsenal now. He's got the machinery to do the job. He will hope on a consistent basis. Last year he delivered twice. Singapore, as you touched on, was an epic drive, and if he's got a car that is the best on the grid this year as opposed to last, then this is his year to strike.
Right, so Kimi Antonelli comes home second. He had that crash in final practice. The team did an amazing job to get it rebuilt in time for qualifying. He lines up P2, right? Do you think he can present a season-long challenge to Russell?
It's a great start for him, actually. You're completely right. Turning around a crash in FP3, jumping in the car, his first lap in qualifying was seriously impressive. To shake off a big crash, he didn't need to pop it in P3 when he first crossed the line, but he did. And then to even take provisional pole at the end, I thought that was great. Speaks for his confidence. He was good in the race.
Yeah, he was solid. Said in our broadcast, there's some parts of the world where he's not old enough to buy alcoholic beverages, but in Australia he is. So I feel like he owes the team a beer or two after that Grand Prix. To get to second was a direct result of that team getting that car back into race shape. Now, yes, it's quicker than the Red Bull, but we saw Verstappen get to 5th, 6th, and that was as far forward as he was going to go. So in an alternative universe, Antonelli doesn't make it out in Q1, starts right at the back of the field, gets that roadblock of the midfield, and then ends up P5 or 6. So as a result, he leaves second in the World Championship. To your point as to whether he can contend full season, this is where George is going to have to be the best version of George Russell, isn't he? Because he's got this young, aggressive, hungry kid alongside. I don't think there's any doubt Antonelli wins his first Grand Prix this season in that Mercedes. The question is, how many does he win? And does Mercedes end up at the end of the year in a situation they've been in before, where they've got two very fast, very competitive drivers both trying to win a world title?
He was quite happy with second as well.
He was,
I think from the weekend that he's had, to finish second, to be a couple of seconds from George, it was good. He won't be happy with second for long.
No.
And that's when it's going to get interesting.
George was Mr. Consistent last year, wasn't he? And I can sort of see it playing out, that the consistency of George in these early races, maybe when his experience will count ahead of Kimi's inexperience, he might then just get a buffer that he can then manage for the rest of the year. And I think Kimi will come on stronger and stronger as the year plays out. That would be my prediction, and I think totally fair for Kimi to have a couple of races to get up to speed, right? This is only his 25th Grand Prix.
It's wild when you say that. I feel like he's had so much time in a Formula One car already. He went through such a bad run in the middle of last year, but having that good end to the year, I think, was so important for his confidence. And it's just salvaging this weekend. If he'd have not got out for qualifying, he can get back. Is he going to beat the Ferraris from the back? I don't think he is. I think he can come back to 4th probably. And then he's off the podium, and things are tough. But they're just trading first and seconds. It's important for him that he starts to get ahead of George in meaningful sessions. You don't want to have George building up that head of steam early on and the team sort of thinking that he's the destined champion. That's the important thing.
Yeah, and I think for George, just to put a full stop on that point, Formula One being what it is, Ferrari will get closer. There's no doubt McLaren and probably Red Bull will get closer as the season goes on. So make advantage while you can, while you've got a car advantage early in the season.
This episode is sponsored by Indeed. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes of this show, booking guests across time zones, tight turnaround edits, and constant time management. And when things get chaotic, you realise pretty quickly how important it is to have the right person on your team. If I had to hire someone tomorrow, I wouldn't just want a good editor. I'd want someone who understands pace in long-form interviews and can work fast under pressure. And in moments like that, you think, this is a job for sponsored jobs. Because Indeed sponsored jobs boost your listing in search results, helping you reach the candidates with the specific skills and experience you actually need. And it works. Sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed are 95% more likely to report a hire than non-sponsored jobs. That's a serious edge when the pressure's on. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. I want to talk now, JP, about Lewis Hamilton. Everything I've seen in terms of the body language of that Ferrari and the way he's driving it makes me feel he's way more happy in this year's car than he was, well, quite frankly, since 2021, but specifically last year's Ferrari.
I think he's got the feel back for the limit of grip in the car. It's something as simple as that you get much more feeling when we're not in the ground effect era. So the rear ride heights are up. You're feeling a little bit more movement coming through. Obviously, the downforce is down generally. The cars are less stiff. They've got more of a conventional platform on it, and I don't think he ever felt that comfortable in the whole ground effect era. Was a bit inconsistent, wasn't his best. He has been so much better this weekend, and he's been so much happier as well. You sense that this is a much better Lewis Hamilton. I thought he drove really well, really hustled Charles all the way for the podium. He's always been good in Melbourne as well. He's always been good in China, so next week's the same. And last year, if you look at the difference between Lewis and Charles, it was pretty similar. So I think we'll see when you get to a Bahrain is somewhere like where Charles is rapid. Some other circuits later on in the year, but I feel like he's upped his game.
Do you feel like there's this year, which is so complex, so much going on, that guile and that experience and that massive amount of history that Lewis has got will help him this year? That ability to process everything that's going on, it's got to be an advantage.
The thing is with this, there's arguments for everything, because on the one end, I'm going to jump the gun here, and you've got Arvid Lindblad, who's got no experience, coming in completely fresh, having an unbelievable race, and on the other hand, you've got Lewis with 20 years of experience, having a really strong race as well. I think you can make a case for experience being better, youthful exuberance being better, either way. In the end, I think is having a bit of mental capacity spare is the key, and any driver can have that. It depends on the character.
He's definitely turned the page, though, hasn't he? I mean, new engineer this weekend. He'd only done, 6 days of, 3 in his case, 3 days of testing in Bahrain with the new engineer, and they're clearly going along pretty well together. I think Ferrari are closer to Mercedes now than they were Red Bull / McLaren last year, and Lewis won the sprint in China last year. I think they're going to go to China with their tails up. I think they're going to be confident.
It wouldn't surprise me if they win the sprint, because what they've got is a rocket start in their locker, and if they can qualify third and fourth, by all accounts they'll be first and second at the end of the first lap. This circuit is an outlier in the calendar. It's really difficult to recharge your battery. Overtaking then can be, on some counts, difficult, because have you got any more battery to spare? But if you've got pace, you can be tactical with it, play that game of chess. There'll be some circuits where overtaking is actually really difficult. Reliability will get better, so we'll see less safety cars. And if Ferrari can then get to the front, and you're having less variability with safety cars, you're having harder tracks to overtake on, you don't even need the best car at that point, the fastest car, to win races. So I think they're in a really great spot.
Are you talking yourself into a Lewis Hamilton victory this year, JP?
It's happening. I think Lewis Hamilton will definitely be on the top step this year.
Being serious for a sec, you do
I'm
believe
not joking.
That?
Yeah. I think he will. I think Ferrari have got a good car. I think the race pace was much closer. I think they both under-delivered in qualifying. Both drivers thought they should have been third as a minimum. Obviously, the gap to Mercedes was whopping. That'll come down at other races. If we were racing in Bahrain, there's no way Mercedes are 8/10 clear. Am I talking you guys into it?
I am sold the moment you started talking.
I was sold before. I completely agree. I think this is a rejuvenated Lewis Hamilton in a rejuvenated Ferrari, quite frankly.
Yeah. We all came into this, and the reports from a very small sample size in Friday practice where the Mercedes were, 4.5 tenths clear on the race runs. That's not the case. They're not that dominant over the Ferrari. So, like you said, JP, if there's an opportunity to get in front and stay there, there's every chance they do that. And I think they'll both win races this season.
Right. Let's just take an extreme example to prove my point here. If you got Monaco, I don't know if you can even fit a car 3 wide in Monaco, but if they start third,
it's going to be wild.
And this will be one for Charles because I think he's a Monaco specialist.
Yeah.
If he starts on the front row in Monaco, I think the car will be so well suited to the circuit. B, if he starts second, he'll lead, unless Lewis is on pole. How on earth is anyone going to come through? Yeah. Ferrari win Monaco. It's set.
Do you think Ferrari's start advantage that we saw today is baked in that no other manufacturer is going to be able to tops them on that?
Everyone will get better. I think Ferrari have an inherent advantage. They have a smaller turbo, which seems to be a lot more forgivable on the start, and they can feed in power really well. We saw with the Mercedes, you had Russell actually got an all-right start, so he was only actually passed by Leclerc on the brakes. But that is with Leclerc skewing sideways to go past Antonelli off the line. Antonelli had all the wheel spin, and that's the knife-edge starts that you get. There are a lot of people up and down the grid. You either had a rocket start or you shipped a load of places backwards. And I do think from the Ferraris, you're going to see a lot more consistency. Everyone will get closer, but I think they have that inherent advantage.
Let's move on to the Red Bull teams now. Max Verstappen, he doesn't make mistakes. I don't believe that. Not serious ones. Not ones that go and put you in the barrier on your first lap of Q1, and you end up starting 20th. Would you agree?
Oh, I would agree completely. But what a recovery! What a Max Verstappen drive! And Hadjar was running towards the front early in that crazy first 10 to 12 laps of the Grand Prix. Was that where the Red Bull was going to run all race? Probably not. I don't think it had the race pace of the Ferrari. And certainly when Max got to Lando in that battle for 5th and 6th place that waged for most of the last 20 laps, that was as far forward as he was going to go. But a great drive from 20th on the grid, World Championship points in possibly the 3rd fastest car on the grid within a shadow of the Ferrari. But it was a typical drive from Max. And if you follow the scoring in the opening 5 or 6 laps, did a bulk of that work early on, got into that midfield and then picked them off one by one and got into the mix. And remember, had to go on to the non-preferred strategy, started on the hard tyre with that view of potentially having to go really long early on, and then with that early VSC stopped and put the medium tyre on. So they were compromised a little bit perhaps on what they wanted to do from a strategy point of view as well. So it might have been more.
JP, he goes from P20 to P6 in the race. Craill and I were speaking to Laurent Mekies before the start, and Mekies was saying they still didn't know what had caused his crash in qualifying. Just with your racing driver head on for a minute, how much does that weigh on your mind going into the Grand Prix?
My hunch is that it's obviously small details that made the difference. They've got a car that's massively aggressive on the rear braking, on the MG UK harvesting. That's been something that their rivals have all pointed out through testing, how aggressive they are, banging down the gears, getting good recharge. Max also came in, he was late into qualifying, and Laurent said that he short braked really hard when he went to that first corner. So my hunch is that they've got a car that's prone to rear locking, and Max maybe just braked too hard and just sent it over the edge with a little bit of a mischief from the rear axle. But it didn't take much to tip it over when you've got less downforce and less grip. Because if the team can't spot anything obvious, then otherwise that's a major concern that it can happen again, right? They don't know what's gone wrong. But if you brake at 10 tenths or 11 tenths of the limit, something's got to give. He drove pretty well in the race to come through.
What do we think of Red Bull's potential? Did we see enough to make any predictions? Do you think Red Bull and Max can join the fight with Mercedes and Ferrari?
they're starting from a lower base, aren't they? Because they're behind on the power unit curve. I think Mercedes and Ferrari seem to have done a slightly better job in different ways. I think we just got to reserve judgment a little bit. As I said, Melbourne is such an outlier of a circuit. This is a recharge dominated track. Speaking to the teams, there will be other circuits where they're basically driving like normal, or it's tiny bits of clipping, not massive D-rates, which we saw into turn 9, where they're down 2 gears on a flying lap. This is not what we're going to see on most circuits, and that's where I do think Mercedes had a huge advantage on Ferrari and on Red Bull. I think Red Bull are better off than they showed. Also, I think I've heard that Max was struggling with his boost button, so his energy deployment late on to try and clear Lando. So I think it's better than it looked, and obviously coming from the back anyway to 6th was solid.
What I think they'll love is that when Verstappen was out, Hadjar stepped up, and brilliant lap in qualifying, and to put them on the second row of the grid. So something that team has been well publicised at not having for the last several seasons. It's often felt like a one-car team with M. Verstappen. So the fact that Hadjar stepped up, I know the race didn't obviously go to plan and he was out early with a quite spectacular mechanical, but the fact that he showed enough in qualifying to step up and fill the void of Verstappen not being there was promising.
Yeah, 100%. It was the best second driver role in Red Bull for a while, wasn't it? Shame he didn't put some points on the board. Yeah. That's the only thing, just to cement that good start. Ending with 0 is still going to be tough for Hadjar, but he's shown the potential.
It was a very methodical performance by Isaac Hadjar, I felt. The way he just worked at it quietly. Once Max was out in Q1, you might have thought heap of extra pressure on his shoulders, but didn't show. He just improved the setup, got quicker with each session. When I asked him in the press conference after qualifying, how satisfied he was, I did get a very French shrug of the shoulders. It's very difficult to impress Isaac Hadjar.
I saw him in Park Furt, mate. I was doing the interviews and I was like, he is going to be so chuffed. He's arrived at Red Bull and he's going to be like happier than George. And it was very much the same. Like, yeah, it's just normal. It's just what I do. Why are you surprised?
Actually, JP, he did say, I want Max Verstappen in qualifying because I need him as he's the benchmark. I want to be able to compare myself to him, and I haven't had that opportunity this weekend.
Bold. I will wonder how long he'll still feel the same as the year wears on, but he was so good. He's a good qualifier generally, isn't he?
Yeah. Now, you mentioned bold, okay? Let's talk about Racing Bull's rookie Arvid Lindblad now. Finishing P8. I mean, let's talk about the start, actually. He goes from, P9 to P3, as you mentioned at the top of the show.
Were you as surprised as we were?
I couldn't believe, because all the chaos, and you got the Ferraris coming through. First of all, you got Lewis suddenly going from 7th on the grid, and you're like, is he going to lead at turn 1? And then you're looking through, seeing like 4 wide coming down to 3, and one of them's a Racing Bulls, and you're like, no way, is that the rookie?
Didn't commute, did it?
No
Did
way.
not compute.
And then he passes Hadjar as well on the first lap. It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And even when Max Verstappen was coming through, he raced him.
I loved it.
Yeah.
It was one of the great rookie displays from Lindblad. All weekend he's been top class. You would never guess that he's a rookie. All the experience stuff he did really well. Got beaten by Lawson only in Q3, but Racing Bulls were on used tyres. He still did a better outright lap time than Lawson, which he did in Q2. And flipping heck, the race start, the race craft, he was passing Norris, he was passing Hamilton, he was racing with Verstappen, all of these guys champions, and he was in his first race.
And the 4th youngest Formula 1 driver of all time.
He must be walking around this paddock, shoulders back, like an absolute ledge.
It was a real exclamation point performance. Yeah, I'm here. I'm in F1. Watch out for me moving forward. Let the driving do the talking. And it was, even at the end, he was in those battles, I think, with the Haas at the end there, and was battling away when Bortoletto as well was having a really good scrap, and he was cool, calm, didn't make mistakes. That was exciting. You love watching those rookie performances, don't you? Because they're the ones, when he goes and wins a World Championship in 5 years or whatever it might be, you go, do you remember Melbourne 2026 when he burst onto the scene and made that massive impact on the sport? It's such a great story.
Crail's fearless, right?
Yeah.
What you don't know, you don't know. So you wonder almost, as a result of this amazing weekend, whether he'll be a little bit more tense as we go to China next weekend.
I don't think he will. I think he's going to be even more aggressive. Well, I did that last week. I'll do it again. No one gave him the memo that racing bulls don't try and fight the big guys. You capitulate quickly, right? Fill in the best of the rest. He went for it.
It feels like that courage, that commitment's always been there. I had the fortune to work with him very briefly in New Zealand 2 seasons ago. He won Formula Regional Oceania, and at the New Zealand Grand Prix, he was given an opportunity to drive an Aussie supercar, and we might talk a bit more about that later on, but lap 1 out of pit lane, had never driven a racing car with a roof or a sequential gearbox like that. Everything had been paddle shift or open wheeler. He went out, turn 1, smoke off the rear tyres, sideways, hanging it out, flat out. So
what a ledge.
Drove straight into the thing and earned the respect of everyone watching from a supercar point of view. So he had that utter commitment and that confidence in him clearly in the junior formula, and that's carried on.
Well, he's earned the respect of everyone in this Formula One paddock this weekend in Melbourne. Now, the ebb and flow of this podcast, the light and the shade. If we talk about the light with Arvid Lindblad, can we bring it on to McLaren and the hometown hero, Oscar Piastri? Can I throw this to my Aussie friend first of all?
I wish you didn't have to.
I mean, poor Oscar, crashing on his way to the grid. He actually said in the pen, didn't he, that he got a power surge. He got 100 kilowatts more than if he'd been at full throttle, he was saying, at the exit of the corner where he crashed on cold tyres. But give us the Aussie perspective on that.
Well, to be fair, it was an Oscar answer. I read another quote that said, but that doesn't mean there wasn't driver involved, and there was. So he clearly stuck his hand up for it, at least part of it, and the post-mortem will dig into all of that. Do you know, I've never felt the vibe at a Grand Prix change as quickly as that did when the big screens around the circuit at exactly the same time we did cut to the shot of the McLaren with the front corner and the front wing hanging off, and everyone looked at the helm and went, oh no, it's Oscar. And it sucked the life out of the venue. There were 138,000 people here today, and all of them, I think, were just a bit like they'd been punched in the guts or winded by it. The pressure he has on his shoulders at this race is extraordinary, and I can only assume, Jolyon, it must be like being a Brit at the British Grand Prix at Silverstone. It's that parochialism that I think our countries have in common with their sporting heroes, and Oscar is a genuine Aussie sporting hero. So that was way worse than if he was crashed out at turn 1, lap 1, or if the McLaren had blown up on lap 15 and he was running 5th or 6th. The shock of that before the race even started was what I think for me made it harder to take.
And Craill, I'd been really surprised up to that point just how much bigger Oscar is this year, even than last year.
Yeah.
You know, he's got his grandstand on the pit straight now, but it took him an hour to get down the Melbourne Walk, where all the fans can, you know, that's 150 metres. But he signed every single autograph. And I mean, JP, he's going to be pleased that we've only got 1 week until the next race, isn't he?
Yeah, that's the good thing for him to get going. He's also been driving pretty well, I think, this weekend. He's had the edge over Lando throughout. Just gutting. I was on the grid as it happened, and so all the fans there, and I completely agree. You're just like gasping. You can't believe what's happened. I think it's a torque spike, isn't it? As he's going around, he's just doing his systems checks, checking out the car, low grip, bit of curb, takes an upshift, and suddenly gets way more power than he's expecting.
Yeah.
And gutting.
What about McLaren as a whole? Norris comes home P5. I was a little bit surprised by the gap to Mercedes, the 8/10 in qualifying. I thought, I mean, Oscar did a good job. He actually said after the session he thought he'd left a little bit on the table, hadn't optimised everything. But again, even if he had, I think it was still a bigger gap than I was expecting. You were at testing as well, JP. Were you expecting a little bit more from McLaren?
I thought everyone would be closer to Mercedes. I think there's pretty much everyone outside the front row thought they should have had third place if they hooked it up perfectly. Hadjar hooked it up perfectly, by the way, and so that's driver made the difference there. There were tiny gaps. The thing for McLaren is when Mercedes bolted, you think, well, they've got the same power unit. It's a power sensitive circuit. There's loads of long straights. The recharge and deployment is so critical. Why can McLaren not do the same thing? They've got the same hardware, same software, same kit. So they're scratching their heads as well as to how Mercedes have found this advantage. The good news is they should be able to investigate that, close it down and find some performance there. But yeah, I was surprised that for the same power unit, a team that won the championship last year are so far away.
Leno stopped twice, first of the 2 stoppers, so even if you remove that extra pit stop relative to the leaders away from the race time, still 30 seconds behind, I think, at the end, George Russell. So it's a fair margin in a race that had 2 VSC and plus a very short one as well. So yeah, they've got some work to do, don't they? But as Jolyon said, this is such a unique circuit that I think the true test will be the next 2 races to see where they genuinely land. I still feel this is like an outlier in terms of ultimate performance, and will they be closer to the money in Shanghai? If they're 8 tenths away in China, that's probably when they start going, oh, we've got some real work to do here.
Well, I think what was evident here in Melbourne was that the big 4, the top 4 are still the top 4. Or do we talk about the top 5 with Racing Bulls now? I don't know. but really, the top 4 are the top 4. There's then a little bit of a gap back to the midfield, of which Racing Bulls are leading it. Can we just talk about some of the other midfield pack? I'm going to throw the newbie at you now. Audi. Gabriele Bortoleto scoring points in Audi's first race, coming home P9. I mean, do you think they can lead the midfield? Are we surprised that Audi are where they are, given that they've had to build a brand new factory, a brand new power unit in Neuburg in Germany? But it was a seamless weekend, actually. I mean, on one car. I know
Catch
on one
that
car.
One quick, yeah.
I had to just qualify that. But I just thought in terms of pace, I was impressed with how that car hit the ground.
FP1, they were really quick, weren't they? I think with this generation of car, if you start the weekend quickly, you can learn so much more. I think there was a few teams in that midfield that were troubleshooting issues. They were working out energy deployment all the way through Friday, where Audi actually started in a great spot. It allowed them to work on setup, really hone in. The drivers were both pretty happy with the car. I'm actually amazed how competitive they were. Bortoleto drove really, really well all weekend, got some deserved points, good strategy, good pit stops. Happy days, I'd say, for them.
Yeah, it was the Sauber of the end of last year, wasn't it? Just in works form, which was great to see. Bortoleto's got a bit about him, doesn't he? I really like watching him drive, and he's got a bit of energy around him, which is great. On the flip side, it's a shame we didn't see what Hülkenberg had. So I don't think there's any doubt they would have had 2 cars in that battle for the final, 7th down to 12th or 13th position.
Okay,
and those final points.
Hülkenberg doesn't start the race, but Bortoleto still out-qualified him, and I've always thought of Bortoleto as a bit of a Melbourne Albert Park specialist. He's always had good results here. I think it's a track where he's had his most regular points finishes in his long career. So for Bortoleto to come in year 2 in Formula 1 and put it over him is a good job.
Finished last year quite meekly as well. He had such a good run, didn't he? Got a load of points in Budapest. We were saying, well, no surprise, he's an F2 champ. Then had a horrid time in the Americas and actually sort of felt like he limped out of the season a little bit. So to turn that around, put that behind him over the winter, points first time, Q3 first time, so much better.
I'm really interested now, and I'll go back to being a race fan on the couch, watching Grand Prix at silly o'clock in the morning or at night. I'm really interested to see what they do as a works team between now and the end of the season in terms of development, because that's something that as Sauber, that team never had the resources to just build the car and develop over the course of a season. But now Audi, they do. So they've got works team ability to develop like a Mercedes does. So they're starting from a lower base, but maybe the ceiling is just as high. That's exciting.
And I love the double act of Mattia Binotto and Jonathan Wheatley at the top. I mean, it's not a coincidence. I think that the PU is decent. Yeah. Binotto was in charge of all the engines when Schumacher was dominating everything at Ferrari. He knows how to build engines. He's running things back at the 2 bases. Wheatley has sharpened everything up massively at the racetrack as team principal. Yeah, I think it's exciting time.
They've probably already developed the most from Barcelona day 1 to end of Melbourne. So I completely agree. Manufacturer presence into a decent race team. It's exciting.
Right, let's talk about Haas. and Alpine now. Who doesn't love a good Gasly and Ocon battle on track?
Gift that keeps on giving, isn't it?
But what about the two teams? I mean, actually, you know, it was Behrman, not Ocon, who got the better result for Haas, and him coming home P7 and Gasly coming home P10. But let's start with Haas and the performance. Think where Haas were last year. They were 6/10 slower than any other car at this racetrack in Melbourne last year, and yet they were solid, sort of front of midfield all weekend here. To come home, Behrman delivering again. Impressive.
Behrman felt like he really crept up on that race too. We didn't see an enormous amount of them in the broadcast. There was a battle with Ocon towards the end, but felt like they really crept up on it, and they sort of hovered around that 8th to 13th window, as you say, front of the midfield, more or less throughout practice and then in qualifying. So not spectacular by any account at any point over the weekend, but sometimes that's good in Formula One, and just be a really solid weekend and to walk away with World Championship points, first Grand Prix in that midfield fight, which clearly is going to be really intense with Alpine and maybe even Williams as they develop and get better as the year goes on.
Yeah, Behrman was really quick in the race. The qualifying pace, I think the team were generally disappointed not to have a car in Q3. Behrman was carving through in the first part of the race, benefited from the VSC and managed to gain some places and go longer, overcut a few drivers, passed Lindblad on the track, and then he was really quick. So I would say standout in the midfield in terms of pace in the race was Behrman. And so Ocon not getting anything out of it was a little bit disappointing. Obviously stuck in that fight with Gasly, and Gasly will be absolutely chuffed to drag a point for Alpine out of this race, because they've been scratching their heads all weekend.
Yeah, well, after the pre-season testing and proof that you can only rely so much on what happens in testing, that Alpine all weekend we sat there and looked at the results going, well, where has that team gone that was arguably best of that midfield bunch after Bahrain? And yeah, as you say, to drag a point out of it, which it feels like Gasly did at the end of that one.
When he launched in at turn 3 and managed to argy-bargy his way through.
Yeah, he grimly grabbed at the World Championship point, didn't he? And it might be valuable at the end of the season. So yeah, they had to fight for that, but kudos to them for getting it in the end.
It's going to be a development drag race, isn't it? Across the grid, but that midfield is so tight, isn't it? Now, Craill, you touched on Williams there. If they start developing, can they join that midfield fight? It's going to be a while. Yeah. It's going to be a while. It's been a very difficult start. Let me remind you, they didn't make it to the Barcelona shakedown. They actually had quite a reliable run at the 2 Bahrain test sessions. So, for Carlos Sainz to get literally no running ahead of the Grand Prix was a surprise, as well as being disappointing. And then Albon qualifying P15, and I mean, some people in the team were telling me yesterday that, they would their pre-race strategy briefing, they were discussing how many times they were going to be lapped. Yeah. That is the lack of confidence that team has got right now. But where do Williams go from here, JP?
They're working on getting weight off the car and adding downforce, so that's a nice plan.
Good luck with that.
Yeah. I heard in Bahrain that the Williams car was heavier this year than it was last year. Bearing in mind the weight limit's gone up by 30 or down by 32 kilos. Flipping heck. That is some weight they're lugging around the circuit. I'm sure a lot of that's come off with sensors and bits and bobs, but no wonder they're struggling. I'm coming to terms with Aston Martin just being Aston Martin this year, which makes Williams the biggest disappointments for me. When you think of all the noise for the last 2 years, every bit of focus has been on 2026. Last year, they got a couple of podiums at the end of the year. They've got a race-winning driver. They got Alex Albon alongside him, who's a very high-level driver as well. And they've got a Mercedes power unit in the back, and they're flopped this badly, nowhere near Q3, nowhere near points. They've really fumbled this set of regs, you have to say.
There's very little I can add to that. Underwhelming to a huge extent. And as Jolyon said, out of everything this weekend, Cadillac included, they were probably the most disappointing story. I think Aston we expected to be what they were. Williams was just disappointing, given all this emphasis that had been built into the clean sheet of regulations for this year.
Now, you've just said, Jolyon, that you've got used to Aston being Aston, where they are at the minute. I actually want to put a positive spin on it.
I was quite impressed with them this weekend in the end.
That's where I was going with. From where they started
they were only 15
the weekend.
laps down.
After FP1, when Adrian Newey comes and says, well, we came here with 4 batteries. We've already destroyed 2. We've got 1 battery left per car. If we have another problem, that car can't run anymore. From that baseline...
Happy days.
Fernando Alonso was P10 at the start of that Grand Prix. After amazing start. I mean, it's disappointing where they're at. But are there green shoots already?
I think you could see a lot more glimpses of promise. I do think, Adrian's been at pains to let's say, point the fingers in one direction of where the performance has gone, and that's with Honda in that partnership. And you could see, actually, the car is working quite well in terms of the aerodynamic package, which shouldn't be a surprise with an Adrian Newey car, even if he's a bit late to it. There's more to come. We shouldn't be surprised that Fernando can somehow get in it and haul out nearly a Q2. And honestly, I would have said he's odds on to be in the top 10 at the start of the race. They chucked him on some soft tyres, and you think if anyone's going to get there through the midfield, it would be Fernando. We know they've got the ingredients to do well. It's just how quickly they can learn, and Honda can get onto some level of terms with what's going on. And at least they did get laps in, so they have a chance to do that. They were never going to be finishing the race with respectability. I think that's why we think it's a success, just because they both took the start, both did some laps. It seems like they're going to be able to run in China because they've managed to maintain batteries. So it's a pitiful start, but there are a little bits of silver linings now.
When you go to your favourite shop on the high street and you get to the door and there's a sign up there taped up that says back in 5 minutes, and you're really disappointed, but you know that they will be open again. Feels like there's a bit of that. I'm going somewhere with this. There's a bit of that with Aston. Come back in 10 races and see where they're at, and it might be the team that we know can be a proper front of the midfield runner like they were on occasion last year. And to that point, in all the media that comes out after the race and before China next week, I cannot wait to see Fernando Alonso's opening lap from the Australian Grand Prix 2026, because I would imagine it was spectacular vision to watch.
On the topic of Alonso, in the past, funnily enough, with Honda, he's been very quick to point the finger publicly. He hasn't done that. I think he does still believe in this project, and that is significant.
He's basically got no choice, has he? He either retires or he believes in the project. So does he want to carry on racing? Has he still got hunger to last for it? And it seems like he does. I do think he's been fairly magnanimous, given this is Fernando Alonso. He's a 2-time world champion, one of the greatest drivers the sport's ever seen. He seems to be in for a penny, in for a pound.
Look, final one, Cadillac. Brand new team, first Grand Prix. You have to remember that this weekend was the first time they've been able to run 2 cars, because the regulations stipulate it's just 1 car in testing. I mean, a huge moment for everybody in that team, and for Perez. Okay, 3 laps down, but he did make it home in P16.
Yeah, so they've got 58 laps of learning from his car and half a Grand Prix from Bottas now to go and process. I don't think anyone expected them to be any quicker than they were, but they look like a racing team, didn't they? They did all of the right things around it. Their stops were decent. They ticked the boxes of getting there, and at no point did they present as a real backmarker Formula One team like we used to see way back in the day, back when Melbourne first came into Formula One in 1996, when you'd have teams 7 or 8 seconds off the pace and struggling to qualify. They look like a proper racing car team, and I think there was a quote from Sergio that said, now we know now all of the areas where we need to go and find, and it's a bit like that quote before, which is, well, we need more power and we need more downforce. Clearly they need that more than anyone else, but at least they've got a bit of an idea. So I think from a visual standpoint, from the marketing and promotion, they did an awesome job here, and they've launched hard. They look like a proper racing car team. Now they've just got to build a faster racing car. Solid
base. They had such low expectations. No one's expecting too much. And we've got to remember they're starting from scratch with this. They've got a load of good technical minds there. I think it'll come, but they've got no pressure on their shoulders right now.
Guys, what a great chat. What a wonderful weekend it's been. Look, final thoughts. Driver of the day, lads. let's hope we have a good scrap about this one, because I think there's a few out there.
Well, my driver of the weekend is this guy jumping into an Aussie supercar. One of our cars early in the weekend.
I should add that when Craill not calling the Formula One Grand Prix here in Melbourne, he is the supercars commentator here in Oz, so he knows a bit about it. I mean, JP, how'd you get on?
You know what? I was not giving it all the burnouts out of the first corner. I was very much straight off the plane, a couple of flying laps. I absolutely loved it, though. Those cars are great. They move around. There's a load of power. I haven't driven a racing car in a long, long time as well, so it was such a great chance to drive it.
Might we see more of it?
I know people. I can hook you up in our paddock.
Hey, I am never turning down the chance. It was a lot of fun.
And Craill, what about this? I mean, yeah, I agree, JP, mega to see him back behind the wheel, and I really mean that. But what about the Grand Prix itself? Give us your driver of the day of the 22.
I mean, I'd love to say George Russell for the way he executed, but I have to go Arvid Lindblad for the Grand Prix performance, but the complete weekend performance. And a colleague that was working with us at Channel 10, Chris Stubbs, did the Pen interviews afterwards and reported back that he was just on cloud nine. He was really effusive about his race, excited, animated, bubbling with excitement after delivering that, and I love that. So that of all the performances today, that stood out for me, and so I'm going to go Arvid Lindblad. I loved it.
Yeah, my honourable shout out goes to Charles Leclerc, just for the gutsy race start, holding George back, the tussle there. But it's Lindblad, isn't it? What an amazing debut. There was the most impressive debut I've seen for a long, long time.
I feel bad for George because he drove a perfect race, executed to perfection, but just the impact of Arvid for mine was extraordinary.
I said let's have a good scrap about driver of the day, and we've all
Go on,
agreed.
give us one,
we've
TC.
all agreed. It's Arvid Lindblad. Aged 18, fourth youngest driver in Formula One history to come in with such a cool head, not be intimidated by anyone or anything, was quite extraordinary, and I'm really excited to see what he can now bounce on to do after this.
We shouldn't forget how difficult it is to jump into Formula One. I just think he's made it look so easy. The pressure, the nerves he must have felt. He's put a lot of pressure now on Liam Lawson, hasn't he, for the next race? So the question is, can he back it up? We'll find out very soon.
All right, and from a team point of view, give us a quick packing order. So it's Mercedes, from Ferrari, from...
What I would I think Red Bull are a nudge ahead of McLaren.
I agree.
Although I would have quite liked to see what Oscar could do, because I did feel like he was just a nose ahead of Lando this weekend.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
And then a midfield melee.
Midfield melee, yeah. Yeah, very close. I think my pre-season predictions on pecking order played out very well in the end result.
Hang on. Your fantasy team, right?
It's probably not doing so well, TC. I haven't even looked.
Well, guys, what a pleasure it is to have you both on the show. Thank you very much for your time. JP, I'll be seeing you next in China. Very much looking forward to that. And Craill, I'll see you next year in Melbourne.
Thank you both for coming. We appreciate you coming to our country to do Formula One with us. I think it was a great show and a great event as well. 480,000 people. Formula One's never been bigger here, and it's only going to get better. I've just got to go and work out how we break this Piastri curse and get him to the finish and on the podium somehow. But it's been fun.
All right,
Thank you.
Craill, I'll second everything you've just said there. And for all you guys listening, for more reaction and analysis from Melbourne, please go to Formula1.com, the official F1 app, or at F1 on social media. And we'll be back on Thursday with our preview of the Chinese Grand Prix, just 1 week away. And in the meantime, why not check out F1's other official podcasts? Carlos Sainz is my first guest on F1 Beyond the Grid this year. And below this episode on the F1 Nation feed, you can listen to F1 Explains live from the fan stage here in Melbourne with Williams team principal James Fowles, who's been answering your questions. But for now, thanks very much for listening. F1 Nation is produced by Formula One and Audio Boom Studios.